While the vast majority of Western politicians have focused their attention on the need to combat Ukraine's rampant corruption, a far more debilitating problem is being overlooked. This problem is driving the country to economic collapse. It is antagonizing vast swaths of the population. It is alienating the country's largest pool of potential investors and contributing to the growing sense of frustration with Ukraine in Western capitals. I'm referring to the current government's ideologically driven choice to sever economic ties with Ukraine's major trading partner and chief investor, Russia. But what about the deep and comprehensive free trade association, the EU Association Agreement, the issue that inspired so many to join the Euromaidan? The reality has been very different from the rhetoric. In 2014 to 2015, Ukrainian exporters could fully utilize only 6 of 36 tariff rate quotas. Inability to meet EU certification requirements is one reason. Another is that demand in Europe for Ukrainian products is simply too low. All of this has led Petro Poroshenko's former deputy chief of staff, Yuri Kosyuk, to complain that, quote, there has been no opening of markets. It has been a free trade zone that is only one way. There is, however, a course that could restore domestic living standards, promote national unity, and lead to a strengthening of Ukraine's international political and economic standing, namely the restoration of economic ties with Russia. To be clear, closer economic ties with Russia are no panacea. They are, however, a vital stopgap measure to stop the current hemorrhaging of resources, manpower, and capital, and win Ukraine time and breathing space for economic reform, and avoid the risk of an escalating economic crisis turning into political collapse. Nor is this choice a choice in favor of the Eurasian Union against the EU, which for Ukraine, with its deep connections to both, could only ever be a choice that leads to civil war. What Ukrainian leaders need to do is to stop trying to pit one against the other and instead embrace the notion of becoming a bridge between them. This is the best way to provide Ukraine with the leverage that it needs to extract maximum benefit for itself. Recognizing our mutual dependency is the only real hope for long-term peace and prosperity, not only between Russia and Ukraine, but ultimately in all of Europe. Thank you.
What I'm going to say, focus on is the larger political picture. In other words, I'm going to ask a simple question: how did we get into this mess? One of the key elements is this fundamental failure to resolve the tension between what I would argue this monist single model and the pluralist model. Now, what does this monist or monadic or singular version? This is the vision of Ukraine as belonging to an ethnic Ukrainian core. This whole basis of this monistic or exclusive model of state building is absolutely predicated on the need to separate from Russia. But this model is ultimately it fails to understand that Ukraine and Russia have developed, as it were, symbiotically over the last 1,000 years. Unfortunately, this monist exclusive revolution or form predominated, and ultimately that is the deeper meaning of the Maidan revolution. Since 2014, since the overthrow of Yanukovych on the 22nd of February 2014, it's taken ever more divisive and violent forms. We heard a little bit just now. The Russian films are banned. There's an extraordinary Russian media is banned. Russian journalists are, I think. They've cut flights to Moscow. It's almost, one has to say, almost insane, the level of virulent Russophobia, which is the dominating motif of this government. The other side of it is, and this may annoy some people, but I'm afraid this has been a more and more frightening development over the last few years, is that the European Union ultimately cannot imagine an alternative outside of itself on the European continent. And that is, I'm afraid, a catastrophic failure of imagination. Gorbachev, at the celebrations for the end of the fall of the Berlin Wall in 2014, was very explicit. You betrayed us. We believed, that's Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, at the end of, during Perestroika, that with the end of the Cold War, we could establish an inclusive, equitable, new European security order in which Russia takes its honored place as a genuine member of this new community. It is incumbent upon our generation and us now to think of a way to achieve this new inclusive European security and economic order, instead of which the European Union claims to have the unique voice. And I'm afraid that European Union voice is now speaking, I'm afraid it's now endorsing policies which I find repugnant, and it's shameful upon it. In years to come, we who are questioning this will actually then say we've saved the honour of the European Union, because otherwise it's compromising far too much in its geopolitical contestation with Russia. So anyway, this is the agenda which faces us, not a short-term association agreement with a government which is unstable, divisive, and ultimately, I think, against all the principles on which the European Union should be built. Thank you.
Ich bin ebenso wie Richard Sorkwa der Auffassung, dass das Assoziierungsabkommen neben der wirtschaftspolitischen Dimension, die wir auch kritisieren, auch eine geopolitische Dimension hat. Ab etwa Mitte der 90er Jahre in den USA wurde die Entscheidung getroffen, strategisch die NATO systematisch nach Osten auszudehnen, bis an die russischen Grenzen. Das ist die eine Seite der NATO-Osterweiterung. Auf der anderen Seite haben wir diese EU-Osterweiterung, zum einen zumindest was weitere Mitgliedsländer angeht und zum zweiten mit der Politik der östlichen Partnerschaft. Die Politik der östlichen Partnerschaft zielt auf die Länder ab, die nicht eine Beitrittsperspektive bekommen sollen, sondern die sozusagen, sie soll einen Ring um die EU schaffen, die Einflussbereich der EU ist, ohne dass die sozusagen auf Augenhöhe auch gleichzeitig Mitglieder der EU sind. Ich bin dann habe mich sehr, sehr lange dann beschäftigt, nicht während der Verhandlungen vor 2013, aber nach dem Maidan, mit dem, wie die Verhandlungen vorher gelaufen sind. Und ich bin dann nach Moskau gefahren und habe den damaligen Ministerpräsidenten Asarow besucht, der unter Janukowitsch Ministerpräsident war und die Verhandlungen mit der EU-Kommission geführt hat. Und ich hatte ein längeres Gespräch mit ihm und er hat das so dargestellt: Am Anfang habe ich versucht, Asarow, trilaterale Gespräche zu führen. Das heißt, mit Russland und der EU und der Ukraine, um die ökonomischen Auswirkungen zu besprechen, weil ein Großteil der Wirtschaft in der Ukraine ja im Osten, im Donbass liegt. Das ist abgelehnt worden von der EU-Kommission, eben weil es diese geostrategischen Überlegungen dahinter gab. Und dann wollte er in das Assoziierungsabkommen reinschreiben lassen, die Perspektive der EU-Mitgliedschaft. Auch das ist abgelehnt worden. Weil das Konzept der östlichen Partnerschaft ist ja kein Konzept der Mitgliedschaft, sondern des Konzepts, ich sage das mal polemisch, das Konzept eines Hinterhofes, eines Einflussgebietes, wie es große Empires immer um sich herum haben. Das ist das Konzept, das hat ja zu großen Debatten jetzt geführt, als hier der niederländische Außenminister gesagt hat, ja, das ist ja, die kommen ja gar nicht in die EU rein. Das stimmt ja auch. Das hat aber in der Ukraine zu heftigsten Diskussionen jetzt geführt, weil die Menschen glaubten, mit dem Assoziierungsabkommen und mit dem Maidan, und wir haben den Schritt nach Europa gemacht, dass sie jetzt sozusagen gerade auf dem Weg in die Mitgliedschaft sind. Er hat dann gesagt, dass er und Janukowitsch im Spätsommer 2013 entschieden hatten, dass die Unterzeichnung zu verschieben, weil sie das für zu früh gehalten haben Und das, als Sie das kommuniziert haben gegenüber den 3 genannten EU-Kommissaren, haben die gesagt, dann werden wir Proteste bei euch organisieren, die zum Sturz eurer Regierung führen. Ich finde das ein ganz schön starkes Stück in der internationalen Diplomatie. Wenn dieses Referendum, wir unterstützen das, ich habe das, ich sage die Linke in Deutschland, ich bin Mitglied des Parteivorstandes, wir begrüßen das Referendum, das Referendumsgesetz, wir unterstützen die Nein-Kampagne und wir wollen die durch die Krise, die möglicherweise bei einem Nein entsteht und die Debatte, die dann entsteht, nutzen, um all das, was heute auch hier debattiert worden ist, in die Öffentlichkeit zu bringen, um einen kritischen Diskurs zu führen und für eine neue Ostpolitik der Europäischen Union einzutreten, die auf Kooperation setzt mit Russland, nicht auf Konfrontation und die auch auf soziale Entwicklung in diesen Ländern setzt und nicht nur auf neoliberale Freihandelsverträge.
It is, I think, most interesting, the change in tone of our own government. I participated, of course, in the debate in the Senate when we dealt with the association treaty, as all parliaments did. And then the tone of our government still was very strong. This is, as it is mentioned in the explanatory memorandum to the law to ratify the association treaty, the government said, this is the most far-reaching association treatment that we ever have made and we probably ever will make. That was the tone of voice when we still had to deal with it in the parliament. But then suddenly it happened that a referendum was called for. And since then, our government, which once was so staunchly, so proud for this most far-reaching association agreement, now says it's only a free trade treaty. We have it also with Jordan and with Chile. But I have it with me. Read, if you cannot sleep at night, read the association treaty. It's 500 articles. It deals with everything. It's a treaty that deals, of course, with the economy. It will make, I think, Ukraine a colony of the European Union, because Ukraine has to adopt every piece of economic law that we have without being entitled to participate in a discussion. So that's, I think, typical for a colony. It is a treaty that calls for an ever closer political cooperation. It is a treaty that calls for an ever closer cooperation with regard to our foreign and our defense policy. If we vote no in this referendum, we at least organize what André referred to, that then we will have to have a new discussion on how the European Union, Russia, and those who are not member states of the European Union and do not belong to Russia, how to deal with a new policy that has peace, security and prosperity for all as a goal, and let alone for all other reasons. This is the main reason, I think, that we all can vote on the 6th of April no, and with dignity and with the idea that we contribute a bit to civilization in Europe. Thank you very much.
I admire your analysis, but the question always ends, it's unbelievable that these people, that they decide about in such a stupid way. You know, why does the European Union, why does this group, why does that group, why does the Dutch Parliament is so idiotic? Now let's see what our system, we are part of a bigger system. The system is called neoliberal capitalism. Now I would like to give you a quote of Thomas Friedman, nicknamed the Imperial Messenger. The hidden hand of the market will never work without a hidden fist. McDonald's cannot flourish without McDonnell Douglas, the designer of the F-15. And the hidden fist that keeps the world safe for Silicon Valley's technology to flourish is called the US Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. This is not a left-wing radical telling you this. No, this is the official messenger of the elites in the West. And the elites decide where we are heading at. Not the European Union with all these people who are sitting there, not the parliament in The Hague. I'll give you a few exact facts, which you will never see in the mass media anywhere. 93% of its existence, the US has been in war. How much does the United States spend on war preparations? Well, that is 54% of the discretionary federal budget in 2014. If you spend 54% of your federal budgets on weapons, what do you need then? What do you need? Anyone? A war and an enemy first. You need an enemy. Ukraine provided the Western warmongers an excuse to start new and devastating violence. Russia would be a perfect distraction for the internal problems that neo-capitalism is confronted with now, like jobless growth, work outsourced or computerized. And in his novel 1984, George Orwell wrote something really visionary. He wrote, "The war is not meant to be won, it is meant to be continuous. Hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. The war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its object is not the victory over either Eurasia or East Asia, but to keep the very structure of society intact." And they are succeeding. And you know why they are succeeding? Because people still think we live in a democracy. It's propaganda. It's total propaganda. Everybody knows it also, except for the politicians, but they make money by it. So that's logical. Question?
Okay.